This episode is brought to you by Audi. The road is calling. Embrace the thrill of the drive with the all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron. Featuring effortless power, serious acceleration, and advanced Audi tech. It's not just a new EV. It's a new way to experience driving. The all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron is here. The next chapter of Audi starts now.
I can say to my new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, hey, find a keto-friendly restaurant nearby and text it to Beth and Steve. And it does, without me lifting a finger. So I can get in more squats anywhere I can. 1, 2, 3.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit. 4.
Galaxy S25 Ultra, the AI companion that does the heavy lifting so you can do you. Get yours at Samsung.com. Compatible with select apps. Requires Google Gemini account. Results may vary based on input. Check responses for accuracy.
You are tuned in to the FowlWeather Podcast, the forecast to your next successful hunt. Coming to you from the home office, Jack's Reef, New York.
We at the FowlWeather Podcast can't express enough how much the cool, fresh morning air and the chance to wear flannel positively affects our mood. It's a wonderful time of year coming, and we'd like to provide a little bit of advice. Enjoy the season, folks. Take it one hunt at a time. We all love duck hunting. We love everything about the marshes and the fields of fall and winter. So soak it all in. Take it one hunt at a time. Don't dwell on the bad hunts. Don't dwell on mediocre duck populations like some do. Don't dwell on the doom and gloom that some portray. Get out and enjoy the season, one hunt at a time. Look, there are just too few seasons in our lives to not take it all in and find the time to enjoy all the greatness of duck country. And I'm going to plug that you should listen to the FowlWeather Podcast to pick the best days to hunt, because it means a much greater chance of ducks in the sky over your blind. Look, we've been using our formulas for years, and it has greatly increased our satisfaction. We basically have 0 duckless days now, and we're using our time much more efficiently as well. If you have all the time in the world, then go for it, no judgment. But so many of us nowadays are balancing work, family, and hunting. We like to think that we provide you with the opportunity for a better balance. Hunt the best and do the other stuff with the rest. So enjoy the season. Like, follow, and rate the FowlWeather Podcast, and stick with us, folks. It's going to be another great season. We thank our every week listeners. You know who you are. Those that never miss a single migration forecast episode each Monday morning. We appreciate y'all very, very much. Y'all are as ate up as me about ducks, duck biology, and duck migration. You know where the ducks are at before the ducks know where they're at. Think about that. You know where the ducks are at before the ducks know where they're at. Our dedicated weekly listeners can pick the best days to hunt because the FowlWeather Podcast forecasts fresh ducks hot from the north. Shoot the ducks from the north before they know where they're at. I'm your host, DrMike, coming to you from the home office in Jack's Reef. Our flannel shirts are hanging in the front room for morning dog walks and training sessions, but by midday we're still warm enough for shorts. The cattails are turning brown, and we're putting the final touches on the farm in Jack's Reef before we head into the season of harvest and then that blanket of snow in the North Country that we love so much. The wood splitter engine was running this week as we prepare firewood for next winter. This winter's wood's already put up. A few last shots of red clover seed were spread on some perennial deer food plots, and we have one remaining winter rye field planting left to complete. But more and more, our minds turn to the marshes and fields, and it won't be long before we will be filling our freezers.
Look, folks, the Farmland Group across the Mid-South is your one-stop shop for real estate brokerage, consulting, management, lending, and appraisals. If you own land or you want land, the Farmland Group is where it's at. With over $500 million in farm sales and growing, Gwynn and Shelby Smith have you covered. Look, if you're thinking about buying or selling, contact the Farmland Group to access their full suite of services. If you already own property and want to build equity and value, the Farmland Group gets it done. If you're looking to purchase a new property, well, they get that done too, and they have access to some of the best lending available. Looking to sell? Get it appraised with a Farmland Group affiliated appraiser. But let's be clear for our listenership too. They also offer farm and hunt property management to create places that attract more ducks and more bucks. Who doesn't want that? More ducks and more bucks. Let the Farmland Group build value into your property. Find them today at farmlg.com. That's farmlg.com. You're not going to be disappointed. Contact Shelby Smith today at farmlg.com and let him know that the Foul Weather Podcast sent you their way.
Last week I reflected with a friend that we probably fill 3 freezers in about a 5 to 6 week period from the beginning of October through early November, and that venison, duck, and goose meat is much of what we eat throughout the year. We also put up 3 turkeys in the freezers last year, this last spring, and then grew and butchered a bunch of farm chickens. But it got me thinking about why then, after that, we just pick around the edges from Thanksgiving throughout the winter. We will come, out to duck hunt some in that cold. We do chase some rabbits, might tip over another doe once our buck tags are filled. And then the ice fishing provides, a different protein. But once the pressure is off, once those 3 freezers are pretty much right full, there's a lot of reflection on the season and satisfaction that the freezers are bulging. It did get me thinking, and my friend and I talked about the term sport, as in sport hunting. Do I enjoy the pursuit? Certainly. We all do. But it's much more than a quote-unquote sport, which, makes it sound like ducks are flying targets. Just sport. You've heard me talk about the importance of duck culture and the good people in duck country. So I do think it is much more than a sport. Technically, hunting by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is split into sport, that most of us do, and subsistence hunting by indigenous people for regulatory purposes. And while I do not need to shoot ducks to eat, it is part of my culture. So it is so much more than the quote-unquote sport. If that's your thing, to call it a sport of duck hunting, then have at it. For me, I don't think we define ourselves well when talking about duck hunting to each other or the public. I don't think I'm a sport hunter specifically, and I don't think I'm a subsistence hunter specifically, but my life would be so much less without being part of this great duck culture that happens across duck country USA each fall and winter. I don't know, maybe some of our listeners can shoot me an email at drmike@fowlweather.co and help us define what duck hunting means to them and what is the real, terminology that we can use. For now, I'm going to keep talking about the duck culture across duck country and not use the term sport hunting or the sport of duck hunting, because to me, it's so much more. Hey, maybe I'm thinking about it too much, but my time in the marsh and fields is precious to me. The pursuit of ducks thrilling, getting it right fulfilling, and then once those freezers are full, the scenes from the season burnt into my memory forever. I'm really good sitting back in front of the fireplace, sipping a good bourbon, petting a dog's head, and planning in my head for the next great season. I guess I'm just not that mad at them. But it's also a season I can never live without, and as noted in the intro, there are too few duck seasons in our lives. So enjoy the season, folks. Enjoy duck culture in duck country USA. Do it however you like, but please do it with a smile and optimism that next year the duck population will grow, the gunning be better, and the weather push them south like they used to do. Okay, enough reflection. Next, we're going to talk with McKinley Dixon, co-owner with his father of Northern Latitude Foods. We talk with McKinley about wild rice and wild rice harvest in northern Idaho. Yeah, you heard me right, northern Idaho. I encourage you to go online and order some wild rice from this great father-son duo at Northern Latitude Foods. When we come back from the interview, we preview what's up with the tropical systems, or lack thereof, and an increasing drought situation for many. Then we will end with the current situation regarding La Nina and what it means for duck migration in the 24-25 duck season. All right, folks, this week we welcome McKinley Dixon of Northern Latitude Foods to the podcast. A young entrepreneur from northern Idaho, McKinley has built a novel wild rice business along with his family. Welcome, McKinley, to the podcast. We're very excited to hear what you have to tell us about wild rice. I know our listeners for sure
are fans of rice in general. A lot of Arkansas people, so we think about, more like white rice in general. And also just fans of rice as it pertains to, ducks and duck hunting. But we also have to recognize the value of wild rice at feeding ducks in a lot of places across duck country. So today we welcome McKinley to help us learn about wild rice as a business and wild rice as table fare. So thanks for being with us.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Imagine what's possible when learning doesn't get in the way of life. At Capella University, our game-changing FlexPath learning format lets you set your own deadlines so you can learn at a time and pace that works for you. It's an education you can tailor to your schedule. That means you don't have to put your life on hold to pursue your professional goals. Instead, enjoy learning your way and earn your degree without missing a beat. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's really cool to be on here.
Yeah, and I reached out and was like, I actually dug around to a few wild rice companies, but you're in northern Idaho, and we'll get into, that's kind of a different place for wild rice to be. But give our listeners a little feel for kind of what it's like to me and a lot of the folks in the Southeast that listen to the podcast. It's kind of like up and over there, right? So what's the climate like, and some sense of just the wildlife surrounding y'all and family in northern Idaho? Let's shoot for that one first.
Yeah, for sure. So it's great up here. It's pretty fantastic 5 months out of the year, and then decent the other 7. We're about the same latitude as you guys are in New York and stuff. So our climate is pretty similar. Cold, wintry winters, and then nice warm summers. And super fortunate to have a very wide range of biodiversity up here. So we spend a lot of time with the bald eagles, the mountain goats, black bears, moose, all kinds of deer, and other little critters. And then get to really enjoy the numerous lakes, rivers, mountains. And it's just a really prime place for a outdoor lifestyle.
Yeah, nobody should move there and ruin it, right?
Yeah, please don't. Yeah, we're full.
I like that. We are full up. I'd also really like to add, and that we think about wild rice in, I think, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Great Lakes region, some other areas of Canada, but most of it's further east. But I've never heard of, wild rice in northern Idaho. So give us a rundown about, like, how did it get into your part of the world in the first place?
Yeah, so we don't know entirely. We're assuming it's duck hunters and probably introduced about 80 to 100 years ago over here. And we just have such a similar climate to its native habitat back east and farther north that it's just slowly developed and spread around all the shallow areas of our lakes and some of our rivers as well. And from there, it's just been geographically isolated, genetically isolated, and so it's really become its own distinct genetic species, really primed for our area up here. And what's really interesting kind of about our area specifically is, in a lot of areas you can have little couple acre spots here and there, little pockets, but that wouldn't be enough to do anything more than maybe a little canoe trip. But what's happened here specifically in our lake is that it's kind of a fluke of history, where back in 1871, when the initial dam was first built across the Spokane River to create some sawmills for the large timber industry that also exists up here, that was eventually burned down and replaced in 1907 with a hydroelectric dam. But that raised the level of the lake somewhere between 6 and 10 feet and flooded what was some pretty prime farmland at the time. So this well-prepped, well-leveled farmland that now has the perfect, by happenstance, happens to have the perfect water depth for wild rice, and the perfect area to be kind of commercially farmed to some degree.
That's cool. So yeah, it's like it was like this like series of organic, some intentional of people putting it in there, and then almost like, mistakes or so, or just happenstance that you got the right soil under the water. So this is like truly like a
lot of
man-made type phenomenon up there, huh?
Definitely, but very, very beneficial to all of the flyways through here as well.
Yeah, certainly. And this is so for folks, we don't do video, right? But McKinley's 20s, late 20s.
Yeah, 28. Yep.
28. So still a young kid, but it's a family affair. So how did y'all, like as a group, get into this business of wild rice in northern Idaho? It's a cool story.
Yeah. So mostly just me talking and then dragging the rest of the family along. But so wild rice was originally kind of farmed back in the 80s and under the St. Mary's wild rice label. And that kind of dissipated in the early 2000s, and then after a big flood, kind of took out that facility. And we happened to get introduced to one of the guys who used to do it, and I just found that I was pretty much fresh out of college and was looking for my thing, and I found it irresistibly fascinating. I got there, the fact that I had grown up here, never knew about it, all the benefits, all of the fascinating components to it. And so my dad and I got together and kind of started putting the wild rice operation back together. So we built our boats, we rebuilt some other boats, and have just been reestablishing all the connections. And last year we bought the St. Mary's wild rice label and brought that back home to Idaho. And of course, we also have the Northern Latitude Foods one, brought it under that umbrella, and have just been growing from there.
Yeah, it's cool stuff. So is there more than one lake you harvest from? And it sounds like you've got a commercial license for that as well. Just like, people can't just go show up and, ram around and then sell it, right? Like like you can use it for personal consumption, but you can't do a commercial thing. Like you guys have a commercial license for it. But exactly. Is it one lake? Is it a series of lakes? Like how many places are you harvesting from?
There's two little bays that we harvest from within the state park, and then there's also some private land that we've slowly developed. Okay. So that's the majority of it, and then there's plenty of little pockets scattered throughout the lake and kind of the region that don't really make sense for us on doing it commercially, but could make sense if you're kind of out there in a canoe looking to do some gathering.
Yeah, which is what I've done before in Ontario and then in northern New York a little bit. And so, if people aren't familiar with that, it's a canoe or a kayak, and, you just hit it with a paddle, and I usually like hang a sheet over or something so it's not falling in the bottom of my muddy canoe.
Definitely.
But this is obviously a whole nother level of that. So I've watched your video online, and I'd encourage our listeners to, if you Google Northern Latitude's rice video, it should come right up, and McKinley's on there, his dad's on there, and you get to see the equipment they use to harvest the rice. But here, McKinley, maybe just give a rundown of the kind of the process of harvesting and then preserving that rice for sale, and give folks an idea of like when is your peak harvest season. Like I think you're kind of going at it right now, so appreciate you stepping away from some of that to chat with us. But yeah, just a rundown of what the equipment looks like that you harvest rice with and such, and then how does it go from being on that wild rice stock in the lake to showing up at somebody's doorstep in a bag.
Yeah, for sure. So it's our operation is probably pretty similar to anything in the Midwest that has been typically used. We custom built a pontoon boat, a pontoon airboat, and so that allows us to straddle and get over the wild rice. And then we have a long, about 15-foot wide basket that the ripe rice kernels will fall into, and then we'll make a few passes through that, spacing it out a couple of days, and that's kind of basically how we collect it. And yeah, that period of time is coming up pretty quick here. We got about a week, so it's usually the middle 2 weeks of September.
Okay.
Is when we're harvesting. and it's both, it's both very serene and also very intense. Because few places are more beautiful than Idaho in September, and it's hard to beat those crisp, cool mornings and warm afternoons. But yeah, the harvest is long days and a very narrow window to get the rice off the water, particularly if there's bad weather in the forecast.
Yeah, I'm jealous, honestly. I mean, mountain backdrop, crisp, clear fall air, and nice clean water, and riding around in your homemade airboat. I mean, I don't know. Like, I just want to quit my job now and come do that.
Yep. Come visit us. Yeah, it's a great time.
So, a lot of our listeners from what I call like southern duck country are really familiar with rice. Like, rice is a big thing in the duck hunting community as a side dish, right? That goes with duck, but also just that, ducks feed on waste rice that's out there. But they might not know a lot about wild rice. So how does it differ from domestic rice? And, I kind of had a sense of the range of where wild rice also grows. I named some of those places, but where does it tend to grow across the U.S. and Canada? So kind of a twofold of how it differs from domestic rice, and then, where people would generally find it, where it's more typical than northern Idaho.
Yeah, for sure. So, from the plant perspective, it's an aquatic grass, not actually a rice, and it prefers a little deeper water, crisp, clean water. Some movement maybe on slow moving rivers, but what really differs is it really needs a cold climate to complete its life cycle. So it really needs a nice freezing cycle in the winter to really help it germinate properly. And as far as where it grows, it's pretty much, you can find it pretty much anywhere in Canada, in the lower regions of Canada, pretty much the entire East Coast, and then as well as there's also there's 4 varieties of wild rice, and there's a southern one that grows kind of in the south as well.
I've seen it. It's like Zizania aquatica or something like that, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Cool. And so, does your wild rice, say, differ from the stuff that's in Minnesota or the Great Lakes? I mean, you're way farther west from where it normally grows. Genetically, maybe it's different, but like flavor-wise, composition-wise, growth form, does it differ, or is it pretty much the same stuff?
It's fairly similar. Our grains are known for being pretty long and fat and really flavorful and rich. And I haven't tried that much Minnesota or Canadian wild rice, but we have a lot of people that do convert as well. Yeah, it's what is I find even more interesting is just that you have those slight regional differences, which I find really fascinating, kind of a terroir of wild rice, if you will.
Yeah, I just heard your wild rice is better than Minnesota's wild rice. So it's like a, Idaho v Minnesota thing here, but
yeah, I'm not trying to start any beef, but yeah.
You don't want to start a beef? I mean, come on. That's how you sell product. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. No, so, on the Great Lakes, I mean, I spent lots of time at Long Point on Lake Erie on the Canadian side, and wild rice is really like a super important food for migrating ducks. Those of y'all down in like, mid latitudes in the south that shoot ringneck ducks when they're eating snails, they're not a tasty critter. But I tell you, when ringneck ducks on the Great Lakes are eating wild rice, they're kind of a bread and butter duck. They're really nice and fat. They're flavorful. It's not quite like eating a corn-fed mallard, but it's not far off, and it's a very unique and tasty bird. But McKinley, do you see? Is there waterfowl that's also using the wild rice patches that you're harvesting from, or is it not as much as maybe what we see in the east here, where a lot of these ducks kind of rely on that stuff to fatten up?
Yeah, so we're on the Pacific Flyway, and we have a pretty wide range of birds that come through. The ones that I see specifically in the wild rice are kind of the blackbirds, mallards, and sandhill cranes. Yeah. And then later in the season, the Canadian geese, sometimes the tundra swan, and occasional wood duck, but I don't see those as often. And then, of course, we have all kinds of other birds out there as well, osprey, bald eagles, and stuff like that. But those ones are less prone to being in the wild rice stands.
Yeah, for sure. And we talked before, like when you guys are harvesting this, I mean, there's got to be enough seed there to regenerate that wild rice stand. So you're not taking all of it, but I mean, your thought, like what percentage, and you're doing like what, 3 passes in a year through this stuff. But what percentage of that rice do you think you're taking? I'm guessing a lot of this, even though you got this beautiful, like people are going to go look at this video now for sure. It's really, the piece of equipment you're running is cool. You got this big screen or sieve or capture, harvester thing on the front. You must be losing. I mean, some of that stuff must just pop off and fall in the water anyway. But like, what percentage do you think you're taking, from these plants that's going into your production?
Yeah, so you're spot on. So the way we harvest is what I consider very passive. So we just go through maybe 10 miles an hour, maybe less, and the force of us just driving through is enough to knock the ripe kernels into the boat basket and then pop right back up. And anything that's not ripe will take another few days to ripen, and then we can make another pass. And in between that time, they're falling off, and yeah, when we drive through, they kind of go flying everywhere. Got one stuck in between my eyeball and my eyelash before, eyelid before. It just
no
goes,
doubt, yeah,
goes flying. But from what we can tell, we get maybe 50 to 60% of what's out there on a healthy stand, and less on other ones. And it also really depends just on timing. If we have a nice, warm, still fall, then it's all there, it's all nice and fat and really ripe to go. If it's but it can just as easily be windy or rainy, and that's all knocking stuff off as well. So, and we've been doing this, it's been going on in this area for 40 plus years, and the stands have only gotten healthier. So we try to look at it as just taking what's available and then leaving enough to keep it going, and also feed all the waterfowl as well.
Yeah, is there a like from cat, like harvesting to when you produce it, like is there more work on the like driving the boat around and grabbing the rice on those days, or is it like post-production and I'm guessing there's got to be like some threshing and stuff like that goes on afterwards? Like, is that the more intensive time thing that like all the family's involved in, or like what's the kind of timing breakdown there of that stuff?
Yeah, so we don't have the infrastructure to do kind of that middle section. So what we do is we harvest it, we bag it, and that's a lot of physical labor because we have to move it by hand everywhere, thousands of pounds. But then we have to haul it down to a facility that can actually handle it. And they have a nice big facility and can process it through. So for us, it's no work, luckily. And for them, they have a pretty sophisticated system that works, pretty well. And so it doesn't require as much manual labor as it would if you were doing something like hand parching it or wood parching it, hand threshing it and stuff like that, and sifting it and all of that. So we basically take it down green. It gets cured, parched, dehulled, graded, and then we'll package it at our place up here. And that also takes quite a bit of time.
Yeah, but that's cool. I mean, you're involving other employment, and kind of helping the economy of the region at the same time, right? So that's neat. I didn't know that portion of it. I had some sense you had some, another home built thing to do that.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, because that can be a lot of work. I mean, we do some real small scale stuff here, like at I quote unquote, I'm doing air quotes here, farm. It's really a hobby farm, and we mostly just grow our own food, and then we give stuff away and help the neighbors out and plant stuff with the neighbors. But like even just winter wheat, I've hand threshed before, and then we've got a little grain mill, electric grain mill, and small stuff, and it's just like I couldn't imagine. Obviously you'd have to scale it up, but I just know the pain that is to go through. So yeah, it's good you've got somebody for sure. So back to differences between wild rice and domestic rice. I mean, everybody's familiar with, well, I think a lot of people cook domestic rice wrong anyway, probably for the most part. But is there a difference in how you should cook, wild rice compared to, I'll call the other rice normal rice. I mean, I know there's lots of different varieties, and I'm going to catch heck from the rice growers on here, right, that really know their rice. But what's the difference in how you might or how you should cook it?
It's fairly similar, just generally takes a little bit longer. We like to just to make it easier to convey how to cook it, we like to say it's kind of like cooking pasta. So, keep the rice covered or bring it to a boil and put enough water in there to keep the rice covered. So that's if you're doing stovetop, it's maybe four or five times the amount of water to the rice you're going to put in there. And then, bring it to a boil, add the rice, and then put it on kind of a medium simmer for 40 to 50 minutes. And then after you get to 40 minutes, keep an eye on it, and it'll start to split from the ends inward and kind of eventually curl around, almost like unpeeling a banana. And that's kind of where you get your difference. So you want cook it a little less if you want it kind of more al dente, and if you want it a little softer and chewier, just let it go for a while. And then, drain the water off, fluff it, add a little salt, and then kind of let it stand and sit for 5-10 minutes, and then and it's good to go. Yep. I like to undercook it a little bit, and then I have kind of like a week's worth, and I can reheat it. It reheats super well. Kind of do some meal prep with it.
Yeah, because it stores well, right? Too, without a problem, like in the refrigerator, pretty much, right? So
yeah, you can probably get 5 days a week out of it for sure.
Do you get sick of eating it? And I know this wasn't a scripted question, but and your only answer is no. This stuff's awesome. You should eat it every day of the week.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's great. It's hard to get sick of it. I mean, it's so versatile. You can put it in, pretty much anything. And from the classic, chicken and wild rice soup, to like a side dish with salmon. We like to put it on salads in the summer. I've even put it in like yogurt as kind of a parfait, an alternative to like granola. If you're doing like the brokens, the little pieces, that's really good for that. Can eat it like a breakfast cereal sometimes if you use the smaller pieces. So it has quite a wide range of possibilities to it, and that's kind of a nice.
Do you have something favorite that you do with it? And like if you're pairing it with meat, like do you have a favorite kind of pairing that you typically do?
Well, duck, of course, but we also
of course. But no, honestly, like what is it? Yeah.
So in our region, salmon's pretty popular. So with the Columbia River and Snake River and a lot of stuff there, and so it goes really, really well with as a side dish for salmon. And that's probably my favorite one. That and bison as well.
Ooh, there you go. So I just came off a full day of teaching, and actually was a few minutes late to this interview with McKinley. I had meetings and stuff, and just ran from the university. And we're doing it's obviously earlier for him than me here at the home office in Jack's Reef, but I'm over here drooling a little bit. So we're gonna ask you a few more questions, and I'm gonna go cook some stuff up myself. But what's the future hold for Northern Latitude Foods? I mean, are thoughts of expanding or developing additional products, or do you feel, is it like, man, we got just a solid line of stuff, our supply demand chain is solid, or is there like a build out plan for y'all?
Yeah, so we're slowly growing our kind of core wild rices. Our production is pretty stable. I like to expand it a little bit, and kind of grow it regionally. Of course, it's not as wild rice isn't as well known on the west side over here as it is kind of in the Midwest. So there's a little more education and getting people cooking with it. But we'd love to keep developing acreage and kind of developing our foraging model on private land as well. In these kind of more flood-prone areas that pretty much are only good for kind of grazing and maybe putting some hay under it, but they flood so often that you can't do a whole lot with it. And so we'd love to kind of convert that back to, 15-20%, like nesting islands and habitat, and then wild rice to kind of fund it. And so that's kind of our stuff there. And then we're also trying to, build out blends and a few other brands as well on the other side of it. So, yep.
That's cool. And people on this end of, on our end, the duck people across duck country be interested. I mean, so those are like wet meadows that have kind of, like in the river plain area that maybe have kind of been drained out, that used to be wetlands, that you might be able to convert back, use them for a more beneficial commercial use, but then also provide, the complementary habitat of some sort to wildlife at the same time.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, I think that'd be wildly popular, right? And heck, I think a lot of folks would buy that stuff under, some conservation name or something like that, right? Like I could see people really going for that as a way to kind of support that effort of, not fully maybe restoring it to wetland. It's going to have some commercial use, but better than maybe being in a prior agricultural use where it was drained. So I think that's a super cool idea. I probably totally missed the mark on how that's going to go down, but that's how I interpreted it. So
yeah, no, that's basically our goal for sure.
Cool. Well, thanks, McKinley, for coming on the show. We're going to put a bunch of recipes up that include wild rice on what we call our Fowl Eater page on the Fowl Weather Podcast webpage. And we already have a few recipes up there, very small number right now, roast duck kebabs, and the DrMike world famous gumbo that exists. Everybody claims that their gumbo is the best. And that's perfectly fine, and you never talk poorly about anybody else's gumbo. So nobody's allowed to ever say your recipe's garbage, DrMike. It is the best out there. So anyhow, McKinley was also generous enough to provide us with a discount code for 10% off your first purchase from Northern Latitude Foods. So if you go to the Northern Latitude Foods webpage and type in FowlWeather 2024. So that's FOWL weather, WEATHER 2024. You'll get 10% off your first purchase, and that's good till, McKinley said, the end of the year. Was that how we were going to do it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yeah, thank you so much for that, and thanks for being a wonderful guest. And I mean, I learned a ton. I hope our listeners did too, and really recommend, try your duck this year with some wild rice. I don't think you can go wrong with this stuff. Support this cool family business in Idaho. And McKinley, thanks so much for being with us. Really had a great chat. Appreciate you so much.
Yeah, thanks for reaching out. I had a great time as well.
And we are back. What a great kid with a great story in business, right? Get you some wild rice to go with those duck dishes this season. You won't regret it. So let's tackle that lack of tropical systems first, because this is something that was unexpected. Again, a bunch of stuff is stacked up against us, including Saharan desert dust over the Atlantic Ocean, which decreases likelihood of tropical and hurricane activity. We also had a lot of unexpected wind shear, which rips apart systems before they can form. This is actually the longest stretch in August that most folks can remember without a named system in the tropics. But we seem to be getting increased activity. The Atlantic Ocean and Gulf waters are still very warm, and activity is waking up. In fact, there is a system that just crossed the Yucatan Peninsula with European model runs that suggest a deepening low centered around the Texas-Louisiana border early Thursday morning. The system right now has an 80% chance of developing into a named system in the next 48 hours and a 90% chance of developing into a named system in the next 7 days. So I think this one's going to happen, folks. The specific direction is not really known yet, but estimates suggest 5+ inches of rain in a swath from southeastern Texas across Louisiana and then centered at the intersection of Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. After that, it depends on how long that low pressure remains, but looks to hit eastern Tennessee and Kentucky in the next 10 days, and we certainly hope it heads up the Ohio River Valley region between Ohio and West Virginia, which is probably the driest place in the east right now in a long-term severe drought at this point. So the hurricane season technically goes all the way to the beginning of December, and we still have a chance for a quality tropical system to help us, or more than one system, to help us fill wetlands for those hungry migrating ducks. But we will keep you tuned into the coming conditions because the Fowl Weather Podcast is now running episodes every week. So every Monday morning, you'll get a new episode. And remember that on the last few days of September and then all the way through the end of January, we will be dropping our duck migration forecasts each Monday morning. Next, we talk the coming La Nina event.
Hold on, folks. Don't turn that channel. We've got some really exciting news for you. The Fowl Weather Podcast has teamed up with Wildlife Strategies. That's right. I'm now working directly with Ryan Delaney of Wildlife Strategies to build value into your land. Wildlife Strategies is already known for quality wildlife habitat management, be it deer, turkeys, ducks, or whatever you pursue. Ryan knows his stuff. Look, I don't add my name to just any business, but I believe in what Wildlife Strategies is doing for landowners throughout the Southeast U.S. and beyond. If you want science-based solutions to create great wildlife habitat, Wildlife Strategies is your best bet. If you're interested in ducks, when we say may your skies be filled, well, Wildlife Strategies does just that. They fill your skies with ducks. Contact Ryan Delaney today at ryan@farmlg.com for a site visit. You won't be disappointed you did. Ryan covers the southern tier of states, and I'm available to build habitat management plans across the northern tier. Contact us today for a quote. The Wildlife Strategies team sees your property through from the initial assessment and development of a 3-year time frame management plan through annual check-ins and course corrections as needed. Contact Ryan today at ryan@farmlg.com or DrMike@FowlWeather.co. You won't be disappointed you did. Fill your skies with ducks and your forests and fields with deer and turkey with Wildlife Strategies.
All right, so we still continue to think that rainfall from a tropical system will help us out. The Atlantic coast already saw Debbie, which removed pretty much any chance of a drought. Duck habitats already have a bunch of rain, and if you didn't catch that in your impoundments in the Atlantic flyway, there's a great chance of a wet September to November period. Going further into winter, it really looks like La Nina conditions will be in place by mid-September. That is, equatorial Pacific oceans will be at least a 0.5 degree Celsius cooler than average. But for a full-blown La Nina event to be declared, a period of at least 5 consecutive overlapping 3-month seasons must happen. If that happens, I don't think it's going to occur until about January, February, March, right? Until those January, February, March sea surface temperatures are released in early April. That all said, the expectation is still that La Nina will affect our fall-winter weather with predictable results. But I will tell you, this year really looks more like a wild card than I've seen in years. So follow the FowlWeather Podcast duck migration forecast each week, because that's going to be super helpful for you to pick the best days. Last year was pretty much a slam dunk that we were going to be really warm with only a few cold shots that really made ducks move at all. This year definitely has greater opportunity to see a series of cold and snowy shots that will more predictably move ducks south. Of course, others will provide duck migration reports and duck migration alerts, but the FowlWeather Podcast is the only authority that uses science-based algorithms to predict duck migration species by species. In next week's episode, we will recap how we make our duck migration forecasts. We also will unveil our new diving duck migration forecast for scaup, or bluebills, canvasbacks, and ringneck ducks, which I still like to call blackjacks. Old-timey kind of a term. So stay tuned. So much more to come this season, my friends across duck country. For those with Canada goose and teal seasons, remember to enjoy the season. Fill it with friendships, optimism, and smiles. With any luck and probably some hard work, those smiles will end up as piles. Be good, my friends across duck country. Please do go online and order some wild rice from the father-son duo at Northern Latitude Foods. And as always, may your skies be filled and shoot straight, my friends.